Can you take us to Virginia Tech on that horrific day?
No.
Don't want to go?
No, it's not something that I'm. First of all, I'm having a good time. I don't sit here and start crying, and it was horrible. And I know people want to say that he was crazy, but I always thought I taught him. I thought he was evil, and that's not a term that you get to use a lot because people think, oh, nobody's evil. Everybody just has a problem. But I thought he was evil.
Right.
And I had said to my department head, I'm going to, either you get him out of my class or I'm going to resign.
Why are classes canceled? They're gonna be. Because I don't want everybody to like.
Carl, so how do you like America? Your second name.
May I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please? Leave the building by the nearest exit. Do not use the elevators.
Obviously a major malfunction.
I didn't have to do this. I could have left. I could have fled. But no, I will no longer run. If not for me, for my children, for my brothers and sisters. I did it for them. When the time came, I did it. I had to.
Jo Sung-hui was a South Korean mass murderer who perpetrated the Virginia Tech shootings in 2007. Cho killed 32 people and wounded 17 others with 2 semi-automatic pistols on April 16, 2007, at Virginia Tech in Blacksburg, Virginia. This killing is the deadliest school shooting in U.S. history and was at the time the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history. Of course, not counting any of the slaughterings of Native American Indians, such as Wounded Knee or Sand Creek, for example, because, whitewashing of history.
You have vandalized my heart, raped my soul, and torched my conscience. You thought it was one pathetic void life you were extinguishing. Thanks to you, I died, like Jesus Christ, to inspire generations of the weak and the defenseless people.
A senior-level undergraduate student of creative writing at the university, Cho died by suicide after police breached the doors of Virginia Tech's Norris Hall, which Cho had locked with heavy chains where most of the shooting had taken place. Born in South Korea, Cho was 8 years old when he immigrated to the United States with his family. He became a U.S. permanent resident as a South Korean national. At the time of the shooting, Cho had the legal status of resident alien. In middle school, he was diagnosed with severe anxiety disorder with selective mutism, as well as major depressive disorder. After his diagnosis, he began receiving treatment and continued to receive therapy and special education support until his junior year in high school. Cho was bullied throughout high school. During Cho's last 2 years at Virginia Tech, several instances of his abnormal behavior, as well as plays and other writings he submitted, contained references to violence, causing concern among teachers and classmates. In the aftermath of the shootings, Virginia Governor Tim Kaine convened a panel consisting of various officials and experts to investigate and examine the response and handling of issues related to the shootings. The panel released its final report in August 2007, devoting more than 20 pages to detailing Cho's troubled history. In the report, the panel criticized the failure of the educators and mental health professionals who came into contact with Cho during his college years to notice his deteriorating condition and help him. The panel also criticized misinterpretations of privacy laws and gaps in Virginia's mental health system and gun laws. In addition, the panel faulted Virginia Tech administrators in particular for failing to take immediate action after the first 2 deaths of Emily J. Hilscher and Ryan C. Stack Clark. Nevertheless, the report did acknowledge that Cho must still be held primarily responsible for the killings, despite his emotional and psychological disabilities having undoubtedly clouded his situation. Jo Sung-hui was born on January 18, 1984, in the city of Asan in South Korea's Chungcheongnam-do. Cho and his family lived in a basement apartment in the city of Seoul for a few years before immigrating to the United States. Cho's father was self-employed as a bookstore owner, but made minimal profits from the venture. Seeking better education and opportunities for his son and daughter, Cho's father immigrated to the United States with his family in 1992 when Cho was 8 years old. The family lived in Detroit, then moved to the Washington metropolitan area after learning that it had one of the largest South Korean expatriate communities in the U.S. Cho's family settled in Centerville, an unincorporated community in western Fairfax County, Virginia, west of Washington, D.C. Cho's father and mother opened a dry cleaning business. After they moved to Centerville, Cho and his family became permanent residents of the United States as South Korean nationals. His parents became members of a local Christian church, and Cho was raised as a member of this religion, although in a note, Cho railed against his parents' strong Christian faith. Some members of Cho's family, who had remained in South Korea, had concerns about his behavior during his early childhood. Cho's relatives thought that he was selectively mute or mentally ill, and have stated in interviews that he rarely spoke or showed affection. Cho attended the Poplar Tree Elementary School in Chantilly, an unincorporated small community in Fairfax County. An anonymous family acquaintance claimed that, quote, every time he came home from school, he would cry and throw tantrums, saying he never wanted to return to school, unquote. According to a former 5th grade classmate of Cho's, Cho finished the 3-year program at Poplar Tree Elementary School in 1.5 years and was pointed to as a good example by teachers and was not disliked by other students. Cho attended 2 secondary schools in Fairfax County, Ormondstone Middle School in Centerville and Westfield High School in Chantilly. By the 8th grade, Cho had been diagnosed with selective mutism, a social anxiety disorder that inhibited him from speaking in specific instances and or to specific individuals. He was reportedly bullied for his shyness and unusual speech mannerisms throughout high school, and at least once for his ethnicity. Other former classmates stated he was a loner who did not seem interested in interacting when teachers or other students tried to include him. During Cho's 9th grade year in 1999, the Columbine High School massacre made international news. Cho was reportedly transfixed by the news and idolized Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold.
Breaker 190 degrees on.
Okay, try and keep as many people down as we can. Okay. Do you know who he is? Okay. want you to just stay there.
Myself, MC2, southeast, corrected southwest corner by the ball fields.
144 and MC2 southwest corner by the ball field.
Burn out.
149 to south 1130.
I want.
141.
There's a student lot in the building from some staff up front.
Okay, units responding and on scene, possibly in the student lot.
There's 144 additional shots fired, large caliber.
144 more shots fired, large caliber, 1130.
Shots fired mid-side, but they let them party down.
Throughout the massacre in the library, they ordered everybody to get up, said how long they had been waiting for this, and seemed to be enjoying themselves, shouting things like, "Woo!" after shooting. Claybold called out to Harris that he found a nick and tried to pull Scholes out from under the table. Harris left Pascal and joined him. According to witnesses, they taunted Scholes for a few seconds, making derogatory racial comments. The gunmen both fired under the table. Harris shot Scholes once in the chest, killing him, and Claybold shot and killed Ketcher. Though Scholes was not shot in the head, Claybold said, "I didn't know black brains could fly that far." You know what I hate? Stupid people! Why must so many people be so stupid? You know what I love? Natural selection. God damn, it's the best thing that ever happened to the earth. Getting rid of all the stupid and weak organisms. Organisms is spelled wrong. But it's all natural. Yes! I wish the government would just take off every warning label, so then all the dumbasses would either severely hurt themselves or die. And boom, no more dumbasses. Heh, and sorry if I offended you, but if I did, that means you are one of the people that I mentioned that I hate. So I guess I'm not sorry, you asshole. Harris sat down with his back to a bookshelf and fired his shotgun through the roof of his mouth. Claybold went down on his knees and shot himself in the left temple with his Tech 9. An article by the Rocky Mountain News stated that Patty Nielsen overheard them shout, 1, 2, 3 in unison, just before a loud boom. Nielsen later said that she had never spoken with either of the writers of the article.
Hey, Brian, you go crazy? Yeah, we got a
But you decided to spill my blood. You forced me into a corner and gave me only one option. The decision was yours. Now you have blood on your hands that will never wash off.
Can you bring the bus over here, maybe? Yeah, where you at? In 800 Ocean County. Okay. Okay? Alright, bye.
Cho wrote in his school assignment about wanting to repeat Columbine. The school contacted Cho's sister, who reported the incident to their parents. Cho was sent to a psychiatrist. In his freshman year at Virginia Tech in 2003, Cho enrolled as an undergraduate major in business information technology. By his senior year, Cho was majoring in English, intending to become a writer.
You gotta be shitting me, Joker. You think you're Mickey Spillane? You think you're some kind of fucking writer?
At the time of the attacks, Cho lived with 5 roommates in a 3-bedroom suite in Harper Hall.
I created my new tracks. There's one of the songs that all he wants to hear was I Love the Northwest over and over. He's playing the finale of the post-up show. Oh my god, you're gonna do something. Josh!
Hey James, buddy, you have a seizure.
Look at it! I know. Shit. Can you do this on stage? We need that. My music is just like that. Oh my god. I sure am. I'll pay you $5.
God bless America. All those comic books. Yeah, that's right. You're actually capturing the magic of...
Did he like music, for example?
Yeah, he did. He listened to a lot of rock, a lot of Led Zeppelin, Nirvana.
You were saying that there was one song you could keep playing over and over. What was that?
It was Shine Down.
By Collective Soul.
It was on his laptop.
His laptop, and you guys heard it?
I heard it. It would wake me up in the morning sometime.
Nikki Giovanni says she taught Cho in a poetry class in the fall of 2005. She had him removed from her class because she found his behavior menacing. She recalled that Cho had a mean streak and described his writing as intimidating. Giovanni reports that Cho wore sunglasses in class, and that when she tried to get him to participate in class discussion, Cho remained silent. In Giovanni's class, Cho had intimidated female classmates by photographing their legs under their desks and by writing violent and obscene poetry. In the fall of 2005, Giovanni told the then department head, Lucinda Roy, she was willing to resign before she was going to continue with Cho. Roy removed Cho from the class. Roy says that since she found Cho's writings to be very disturbing, she asked for help from the police and the university administration. However, Roy states that the police had difficulty since Cho did not make any explicit threat. After Giovanni was informed of the massacre, she remarked that she, quote, knew when it happened that that's probably who it was, and would have been shocked if it wasn't, unquote. Roy had taught Cho an introduction to poetry the previous year. She described him as, quote, actually quite arrogant and could be quite obnoxious, and was also deeply, it seemed, insecure, unquote, and that she told him numerous times to go to counseling. She said that Cho resisted speaking in class and took cell phone pictures of her. After Roy became concerned with Cho's behavior and the themes in his writings, she started meeting with Cho to work with him one-on-one. However, she soon became concerned for her safety and told her assistant that she would use the name of a dead professor as a duress code in order to alert the assistant to call security. After Roy notified authorities of Cho's behavior, she urged Cho to seek counseling. Roy described Cho as seeming extraordinarily lonely and said that Cho said to me once he was lonely and didn't have friends. Other professors were familiar with Cho's disturbing demeanor and recommended that Cho seek counseling. Some professors were not aware, until informed by others, that Cho had mental health problems and had been reported to the police, afterwards speculating that the information was not accessible or was privileged and could not be released. It is reported that in his first year at Virginia Tech, Cho tried to fit in, but had become very isolated in his last year. During one party, he sat in the corner and repeatedly stabbed the carpet in a girl's room while his roommates were present. Fellow students described Cho as a quiet person who would not respond if someone greeted him. Student Julie Poole recalled that on the first day of a literature class the previous year, the professor found that Cho had written only a question mark instead of his name on a sign-in sheet. So, quote, we just really knew him as the question mark kid, unquote. Karen Graywall and Joseph Aust, who shared a dormitory suite with Cho, reported that Cho was reclusive and they mutually avoided interacting with him. Both roommates claimed Cho had an imaginary girlfriend named Jelly. Aust notes that during the last couple weeks, he noticed that Cho's sleep schedule became unusual. Andy Koch and John Ide, who once shared a room with Cho at Cochrane Hall during 2005 and 2006, state that they were aware of the imaginary girlfriend as well. Koch claimed that Cho, under the influence of alcohol at a party, described Jelly as a supermodel living in space. Koch described other incidents of disturbing behavior. Once, Cho stood in the doorway of his room late at night, taking photographs of Koch. Cho repeatedly placed harassing cell phone calls to Koch as Cho's brother, ? A name Cho also used when introducing himself to girls. Koch and Ide searched Cho's belongings and found a pocket knife, but they did not find any items that they deemed threatening. Koch also described a telephone call that he received from Cho during the Thanksgiving holiday break from school, during which Cho claimed to be vacationing with Vladimir Putin in North Carolina. Koch and Ide, who had earlier tried to befriend him, gradually stopped talking to him and told their friends, especially female classmates, not to visit their room. On one instance, Cho told his roommates he had frightened a girl when he went to her dorm to look her in the eyes. Cho remarked he only found promiscuity in her eyes. Koch and Ide stated that Cho had been involved in 2 incidents involving 2 different female students, which resulted in verbal warnings by the Virginia Tech campus police. The 2 students felt Cho was stalking them, but did not press charges. Koch and Ide state that on at least 2 occasions, police came to their room to investigate a girl's complaint due to Cho's behavior online. According to Koch, one of these visits, during which the police came at night to Cho and Koch's dorm and banged at the door, was due to Cho's harassment of a female student and talking about suicide online. The first such alleged incident occurred on November 27, 2005. Cho had contacted through phone calls and in person by making an unannounced visit to her room with a female student who notified Virginia Tech Police Department. The police said there were no actual threats of violence in those messages, but were simply annoying. 2 uniformed members of the campus police visited Cho's room at the dormitory later that evening and warned him not to contact the student again. Cho complied. The second alleged incident came to light on December 13th, 2005.
See how she leans her cheek upon her head. Oh, that I were a glove upon that hand, that I might touch that cheek.
In the preceding days, Cho had contacted a friend of Koch via AIM and wrote on her doorboard a line from the Shakespeare play Romeo and Juliet.
By a name I know not how to tell thee who I am. My name, dear saint, is hateful to myself because it is an enemy to thee. Had I it writ, I would tear the word.
The young woman was initially unconcerned by the AIM messages and the quotation until she was contacted by Koch via AIM, who informed her of Cho's previous, earlier stalking incident and speculated that Cho had schizophrenia. The young woman contacted the campus police, who again warned Cho against further unwanted contact. Later the same day, Cho sent an email to Koch stating, "I may as well kill myself now." Worried that Cho was suicidal, Koch contacted his father for advice. Both contacted campus authorities. The campus police returned to the dormitory and escorted Cho to New River Valley Community Services Board, the Virginia mental health agency serving Blacksburg. On December 13th, 2005, Cho was taken by police to the psychiatric hospital of New River Valley Community Services Board. There, Krause, the physician who examined Cho the same day, declared Cho was found mentally ill and in need of hospitalization. He noted that Cho had flat affect and depressed mood, and that Cho denies suicidal ideation and does not acknowledge symptoms of a thought disorder. The physician also noted his insight and judgment are normal. Cho, suspected of being an imminent danger to himself or others, was detained temporarily at Carilion St. Albans Behavioral Health Center in Radford, Virginia, pending a commitment hearing before the Montgomery County, Virginia District Court. On December 14th, 2005, Cho was released from the mental health facility. After Cho's release, on the same day, Virginia Special Justice Paul Barnett certified in an order that Cho presented an imminent danger to himself as a result of mental illness and ordered treatment for Cho as an outpatient. However, Cho did not receive the treatment which had been ordered, as due to Virginia's health system, neither the court, the university, nor community services officials followed up on the judge's order. Because Cho was not involuntarily committed to a mental health facility as an inpatient, he was still legally eligible to buy guns under Virginia law.
The killer, who was known for never speaking, spewing words of hate and resentment as he prepares for his own death and the death of so many others. The video was accompanied by stills. This is how his victims probably saw Cho. This is also how he wanted to be remembered. The leading actor in a blood-drenched drama, imitating his icons of brutality.
I will freaking kill you! I'm gonna pull out a goddamn shotgun and blow your damn head off!
Cho's mother sought help from her church for Cho's problems. Members of the church told Cho's mother that he had demonic power and needed deliverance. Before the church could meet with the family, however, Cho returned to school to start his senior year at Virginia Tech.
This is a picture of Cho's Spartan room. The student, who apparently lived without joy, bitterly resented the pleasures of others.
You had everything you wanted. Your Mercedes wasn't enough, you bet. Your golden necklaces weren't enough, you snobs. Your trust fund wasn't enough. Your vodka and cognac weren't enough. All your debaucheries weren't enough. Those weren't enough to fulfill your hedonistic needs.
If you work a long time, and I've worked for 30 years with young people, then you start to understand just how urgent their need is and how much they need to say to you. And the main thing you have to be able to do, I think, is listen, and then know when you need to seek help if someone is in trouble.
I know that whatever it was, he had it planned. I'm not a big fan of the mental breakdown. They plan, whether it's Aurora, Colorado, or whether it's the man that shot Representative Gifford and the federal judge. They plan, but then all of a sudden they have this, they're mentally incapable, and mentally incapable. They can buy a gun and buy bullets, then I think they're very well capable.
This is it. This is where it all ends. End of the road. What a life it was. Some life.
And the pictures pose a chilling question. What made this face turn into this?
Sadistic sound, I may be nothing but a piece of
This is his world. By making this videotape, sending pictures, writing a multi-page document, that he's basically in complete control. He doesn't have to deal with any of us. He's not talking to anybody. It's him just getting it out to us. And so there is nobody to stop him or control him or make him feel bad.
And in his world, it seems, everyone was to blame for Cho's problems but himself.
You have vandalized my heart, raped my soul, and torched my conscience. You thought it was one pathetic void life you were extinguishing. Thanks to you, I die, like Jesus Christ, to inspire generations of the weak and the defenseless people.
Cho Sung-hui was seen near the entrance to West Ambler Johnston Hall, a co-ed residence hall that houses 895 students at about 6:47 a.m. on April 16, 2007. Normally, the hall is accessible only to its residents via magnetic key cards before 10 a.m. Cho's student mailbox was in the lobby of the building, so he had a pass card allowing access after 7:30, but it is unclear how he gained earlier entrance to the building. Around 7:15 a.m., Cho entered the room that freshman Emily J. Hilscher shared with another student and shot Hilscher, a 19-year-old from Woodville, Virginia. After hearing the gunshots, a resident assistant, 22-year-old senior Ryan C. Clark of Martinez, Georgia, attempted to aid Hilscher. Cho shot and killed Clark. Hilscher remained alive for 3 hours after being shot, but no one from the school, law enforcement, or hospital notified her family until after she had died. The West Ambler Johnston Hall attack seemed to work to Cho's advantage, almost as a distraction for his upcoming attack on Norris Hall.
Do you know what it feels like to be spit on your face and have trash shoved down your throat? Do you know what it feels like to dig your own grave? Do you know what it feels like to have your throat slashed from ear to ear? Do you know what it feels like to be torched alive? Do you know what it feels like to be humiliated and be impaled upon on a cross and left to bleed to death for your amusement? You have never felt a single ounce of pain your whole life, yet you want to inject as much misery in your life as you can, just because you can. You had everything you wanted. Your Mercedes wasn't enough, you brat. Your golden necklaces weren't enough, you snob. Your trust fund wasn't enough. Your vodka and cognac weren't enough. All your debaucheries weren't enough. Those weren't enough to fulfill your heathenistic needs. You had everything.
Cho left the scene and returned to his room in Harper Hall, a dormitory west of West Ambler Johnston Hall. While police and emergency medical services units were responding to the shootings in the dorm next door, Cho changed out of his blood-stained clothes, logged onto his computer to delete his emails and his student university account, and then removed the hard drive. At 8:10 a.m., Cho is believed to have been seen near the campus duck pond. Although authorities suspected Cho had thrown his hard drive and mobile phone into the water, a search by divers was unsuccessful. Almost 2 hours after the first killings, Cho appeared at a nearby post office and mailed a package of writings and video recordings to NBC News.
What may be the most important Supreme Court abortion decision in decades.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams.
Good evening. We now know what the Virginia Tech gunman was doing during that 2-hour period between shootings on campus. He was compiling before going to the post office and mailing via overnight mail what can only be described as a multimedia manifesto containing video, still pictures, and a lengthy document to NBC headquarters, this very building here in New York. The envelope was sent from Blacksburg, Virginia on Monday morning. And looking at a copy, you can even see the handwriting of the clerk checking it in at 9:01 a.m. But because the gunman had the wrong zip code, and there are 3 different scratched out attempts at it along with Rockefeller Avenue and not Rockefeller Plaza in New York, the zip code had to be corrected, and it didn't arrive here until today.
These materials proved to be of little investigative value to authorities.
We are sensitive to how all of this will be seen by those affected, and we know we are in effect airing the words of a murderer here tonight. We asked our justice correspondent Pete Williams to be with us here in New York from Washington, where he's been following this story. Pete, begin at the beginning.
Well, Brian, after seeing all this material, it's clear why the profilers have compared Cho Sung-Wi to the students who shot their classmates at Columbine High School. In forceful language, he expresses the same kind of me against the world attitude. In his 1,800-word diatribe, he expresses rage, resentment, and a desire to get even. With exactly whom, he never says.
You had 100 billion chances in the way to have avoided today, but you decided to spill my blood. You forced me into a corner and gave me only one option. The decision was yours. Now you have blood on your hands that will never wash off.
Much of it is incoherent, laced with profanity. He rails against hedonism and Christianity.
You just loved crucifying me. You loved inducing cancer in my head, terrorizing my heart, and raping my soul all this time.
Though he tried to cover his tracks by filing down the serial numbers on his guns, he obviously wanted the world to know who was responsible for the worst mass shooting in America. He began working on these materials at least 6 days beforehand.
That morning, 16 students were taking intermediate French in room 211 with Professor Jocelyn Couture-Nowak. One student arrived late, stating that the police had locked down her dorm, West Ambler Johnston, because of a double homicide that had occurred earlier that morning. Cho entered Norris Hall. In a backpack, he carried heavy-duty chains and locks, a hammer, a knife, 2 purchased handguns with 19, 10, and 15 round magazines, and nearly 400 rounds of ammunition. With the locks and chains, he chained the 3 main entrance doors shut and placed a note on one, saying that attempting to open the door would cause a bomb to explode.
From your TV to your radio, your iPod to your cell phone, whether you're at home or on the move. NBC News, America's news leader.
Congress needs to pass an emergency war spending bill. And that's why 70 days ago, I sent Congress an emergency war spending bill that would provide the vital funds our troops urgently need. But instead of approving this funding, Democrats in Congress have spent the past 70 days pushing legislation that would undercut our troops. They passed bills in the House and the Senate that would impose restrictions on our military commanders. They set an arbitrary date for withdrawal from Iraq. And they spend billions of dollars on domestic projects that have nothing to do with the war. A time of war is a time of sacrifice for our nation, but especially for our military families.
Shortly before the shooting began, a faculty member found the note and took it to the 3rd floor to notify the school's administration. Cho geared up in the empty room 200 before the shooting began. According to several students, he looked into several classrooms, likely to see how many people were in each room. Aaron Sheehan, an eyewitness and survivor who had been in room 207, told reporters that the shooter peeked in twice earlier in the lesson, and that, quote, "It was strange that someone at this point in the semester would be lost, looking for a class," unquote. It was around 9:39 a.m. when a series of loud banging noises erupted in Norris Hall. Initially thinking the sound had to do with nearby construction, nobody in room 211 panicked. But as the banging continued, Madame Couture realized something was wrong. According to survivors, Couture's face dropped as the realization became clear.
Bang, bang, bang. You could tell this was something, in this hallway. This was not something outside. And the moment we heard those second bangs, the teacher's expression just dropped. You could tell she was very concerned with what that was. I still didn't even know what that was. It was kind of a shock, disbelief. Is that really a gun? So she went immediately to the doorway to look to see what was making all the noise, and as soon as she opened the door, she slammed it back shut, and she turned around to all of us and told all of us to get underneath our desks.
Cho's attack on Norris Hall began in an advanced hydrology engineering class taught by G.V. Lagonathan in room 206. 13 registered students were inside. Cho shot and killed the professor, then continued firing, killing 9 of the 13 students in the room and injuring 2 others.
Walked to the door real fast. Didn't say anything. All he did was bang, 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 bang. Shot a girl here, shot a girl there, shot the instructor. Shot the guy who was first seat, front row, first seat, right by the door. Shot him side of the face. And while I was ducking and trying to get down and hide underneath the double wide rows of desks, or column rather, of desks, he's walking around, bang, 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 just shooting, unloading, and somewhere along the way, he ran out of rounds, emptied his magazine, slipped in another one, in a matter of 1.5, 2 seconds, went back to work. Bang, 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 bang.
Same gun.
22.
Please tell me that's not what I think it is, Couture said aloud to her class. She walked over to the door, opened it, and peeked out into the hallway. Then she slammed it and told her students to get underneath their desks. Some did, others froze. With all the color drained from her face, the professor asked for someone to call 911. Colin Goddard, a 21-year-old international studies major, pulled out his cell phone and dialed the number. After exiting the classroom, Cho fired down the hall at 2 students who were fleeing from room 204 next door. The fleeing students managed to escape down the stairwell across the hall. He also fired at another student and substitute professor from room 205 who were peering out from the door, but they survived. It was 9:41 a.m. when Goddard's call came in. Room 211, Norris Hall, he says to the dispatcher. She asked where that was. Virginia Tech. His tone is urgent, but somewhat calm. Room 211, Norris Hall. Goddard then tells her someone appears to be shooting a gun somewhere inside the building, and it sounds close.
One of the worst things a human being can smell is death. You're in a room not real large. It's enough to hold about 30 people. And you have all that carnage laying on the ground, blood and so on and so forth. All those bodies will emit a real horrible stench. And the window was open and everything, and my stomach was turning. It was just that bad.
Cho went into room 207, where instructor Jamie Bishop was teaching introductory German. He shot Bishop and some students near the door, then walked down the aisle, shooting more victims. Bishop and 4 students were killed. 6 other students were shot and wounded.
And so you stayed under your desk?
Yes, until the gunman left our classroom.
Can you tell us anything about the gunman? What he looked like, what he said, what he was doing when he came into the room?
He was male, Asian descent, and he was about 6 feet tall, wearing a black leather coat and then a maroon hat. And he didn't say anything, which I found very unusual. He just started shooting people. Nothing can describe this. Something that you would never imagine in life. Something like out of a dream.
Cho then moved on to Norris 211 and 204, where he was initially prevented from entering due to barricades erected by instructors and students. Hearing the commotion from below, Kevin Granada guided 20 students from a classroom on the 3rd floor into his office, where the door could be locked, and went downstairs to investigate, along with another professor, Wally Grant, where they were both shot by Cho in the hallway. Grant, who quickly fled into a bathroom, was wounded and survived, but Granada died of his injuries. None of the students locked in Granada's office were hurt or killed.
There are consequences for Congress's delay in getting our troops the money that the Defense Department has requested. Congress's failure to fund our troops will mean that the readiness of our forces will suffer. This is unacceptable to me, it's unacceptable to you, and it's unacceptable to the vast majority of the American people.
The door! Put desks in front of the door! A male student cries in room 211. Couture and his student, Henry Lee, attempted to barricade the door with various lightweight desks since there was no way for it to lock. Godard remains in his seat, relaying to the dispatcher that they're trying to block the entrance while staring at Madame Couture. The 49-year-old professor tries to back away from the door in what little time she has to react. Not even a minute into the call, a few loud bangs erupt from Godard's end of the line. Cho shoots through the wooden door. Godard then hides underneath his desk and positions his body to where he's facing the other side of the classroom. He turns his head back briefly and sees a figure wearing combat boots. He manages to mumble something that's inaudible, then stops talking altogether as Cho enters the room and kills Couture. The dispatcher asks Godard if he's okay. Silence. The gunfire continues. Cho has killed Henry Lee. Godard closes his eyes. Another commotion ensues as Matthew Laporte gets up and runs towards Cho in an attempt to tackle him. 7 rapid bangs are heard. Cho has executed Laporte. Godard hides the phone as best he can. The dispatcher relays to the responding units that the shooter appears to be in the room and the caller isn't speaking.
I jumped under the desk next to me. I tried to turn it over and cover myself. Really, it was only had seconds. And it was in total shock. You know, I was just conjugating French verbs and now someone's shooting me.
Cho fires towards students sitting near the windows. Several female screams are heard. In another series of gunshots, a bullet enters Godard's leg, which shatters his femur. "I've been hit," he whispers frantically to the dispatcher.
I felt one of those gunshots above my knee. I felt like someone had kicked me with all their might, and that kick sensation kind of faded into this sharp, stinging, burning sensation that kind of faded into this warm wetness, and then kind of faded into numbness, and I remained pretty much numb from head to toe the entire 9.5 minutes, and probably the longest 9.5 minutes of my life.
He can be heard swearing profusely as the pain sets in. Another shot. There's a scratching noise as Godard's cell phone flies out of his hand and makes its way across the carpeted floor. It lands near 19-year-old Emily Haas. The operator asks units for their estimated time of arrival. A few seconds later, the gunfire stops. A new voice is heard. Haas has picked up the phone, telling 911 that the shooter has left the room. The gunfire continues in the background, but it sounds muffled, indicating that Cho went into another classroom. Haas keeps her voice low, fearing that the shooter might come back. Very faintly, student Clay Violand can be heard telling those who are still conscious that they had to be quiet. "We've been hurt," Haas whispers into the phone. Then she repeats Godard's previous words, "Room 211, Norris Hall." Retracing his path, Cho returned to room 206. According to a student eyewitness, the movements of a student, Walid Shalan, who was already wounded, distracted the aggressor from a nearby student after he had returned to the room. Shalan was shot a second time and died. Also in the same room, another wounded student, Guillermo Coman, was shielded from more serious injury by having the body of student Bertahi Lumbantaran placed on top of him. 2 other students, who were also in the room, made it out alive. After his first entry to room 207, several students had barricaded the door and had begun tending to the wounded when Cho returned minutes later. Caitlin Carney and spokesperson Derek Odell were injured while holding the door closed, but the remaining students survived. In room 205, students had already barricaded the door with a large table after graduate assistant Hayan Cheng, who was substituting for the professor, and a student saw Cho heading toward them. Cho shot through the door about 7 times, but failed to force his way in. No one in the classroom was wounded or killed. Across the hall, in room 204, Laville Lebrescu a Holocaust survivor from Romania, forcibly prevented the gunman from entering the room by holding the door closed with his body until most of his students escaped through the windows. After kicking open the window screens, the students successfully escaped. Some suffered leg injuries while landing on the ground 2 floors below. Through the door, Librescu was shot 4 times, including through his wristwatch. 2 others, who were lying in a corner near the windows, were injured but survived and described that after most of their classmates escaped through the windows and after the armed aggressor shot 4 times through the door, he finally forced his way in. Upon seeing the open windows and hardly any students in the room, Cho confronted Professor Librescu and student Minal Penchal, who was lying on the ground next to the door, and fatally shot both in the temple. He then turned to 2 other students who were taking cover and critically injured them before leaving and re-entering room 206 the 3rd time. "What's your name?" the dispatcher asks Haz. "I can't talk," she whispers. The dispatcher tells her, "Stay under the desk. They'll be there in a minute." Haz panics. "He's in here!" At this point, it's been a little over 5 minutes since the 911 call was placed. The gunfire resumes. Godard is hit again. Cho steps over him and points his weapon towards another student. Those who were previously injured are now being executed. The shots continue. Haz screams into the phone, "I've been hit!" A bullet has grazed her head. Fragments are now stuck in her hair. Her breathing gets faster. "He's reloading!" Haz whimpers to the dispatcher. She's trying to stay calm and to ease her breathing. The dispatcher yells at her own team, "Still shooting in Norris!" Cho eventually leaves the room for a second time. Haz still refuses to talk. 8 minutes into the call, police arrive at Norris Hall. They try using a shotgun to blast away the chains that held the main entrance shut. Haz is told that help has arrived. She says nothing. The police were not able to shoot their way through the chain-locked entrances, but managed entry via a separate entrance. As police started to descend the stairwell, Cho had already begun to hear the footsteps. He He looked out into the hallway briefly before walking back into the center of room 211. The call picks up a few more shots. Then there's a deafening silence. And finally, one singular bang.
What a life it was, so nice.
The dispatcher has unknowingly just heard Jo Sung-hee commit suicide. A minute goes by. Labored breathing is heard, though it's unknown if this is coming from Haz or someone close to her. The dispatcher then informs her that the police are on the second floor. Haz needs to open the door for them. The 19-year-old is heard struggling to stand. A small thunk reveals that she set Godard's cell phone on top of a nearby desk. Haz quietly cries as she sees the bodies of Couture and Lee sprawled near the door with gunshot wounds to their heads. There's another noise. Violand, the only 211 student who wasn't shot at all, steps past Haz and moves the bodies and desks just enough to where the police can finally enter the room. It's now been almost 10 minutes since the 911 call was placed. A male voice shouts, "Shoot her down!" The line disconnects once the dispatcher confirms that police have secured the scene. During the two attacks, Cho killed 5 faculty members and 27 students. 2 students in West Ambler Johnston and 30 people at Norris Hall before he committed suicide. The Room 211 911 call, which picked up every murder that occurred in the classroom, was deemed too graphic for public viewing. It was covered during a news broadcast in June 2007, but none of the actual audio was played. Godard has since refused to listen to the 911 call, and Haz won't even talk about it. One of the responding officers described the call as one of the most gruesome things she has ever heard. As of 2025, it is unknown if the recording itself still exists.
Okay, cover on that. In with you.
His desk.
And not normally would we be getting out of the president's speech, but we do think it's important to get back to the story we've been telling you about because we have some additional information about the shooting that took place at Virginia Tech. We are learning now from the campus website there is apparently a second shooting now that has taken place at Norris Hall. We're trying to find that location for you on the map that we have of the campus. Haven't quite found the building yet, but a picture there of where, of course, Virginia Tech is located. So again, according to the campus website, there has apparently been a second shooting now at a place called Norris Hall, and according to the Associated Press, they are now reporting 7 to 8 additional casualties. We first told you a moment ago about one person being killed and one person being injured, according to the Associated Press, and we had additionally got information shortly after that from our affiliate on the ground that apparently someone is in custody. We have not heard any more about that, so we're just trying to bring it to you as it develops.
And square some of that reporting as well, the timing of this second incident. So clearly what we have, you'd have to say it is a major violent crime event that is unfolding right now on the campus of Virginia Tech University in Blacksburg, Virginia. As you mentioned, Heidi, the earlier reports that we brought you here in the newsroom were of one person dead and one other person wounded, but now the latest reports, and I see you jotting down some information. Let me know when you're ready with that.
Yeah, apparently CNN has now confirmed that there is one person in custody, and of course, when a situation like this happens, you don't know if there may be more people connected with all of this. So this person who is now in custody, CNN has confirmed, is being described as the shooter. Again, we are not aware if there may be more people connected with this, so as sort of standard operating procedure, police and authorities there are still continuing to search.
Why are classes canceled? They're going to be. Because I don't want everybody to like...
Carl, so how do you like America, your second name? It's just like in the movies.
Yes. Hi, I'm
Wow, how are you doing?
The guy with the camera. Oh.
Welcome to the hottest clip on YouTube.
Yeah, that's good. Running frantically because they don't know who the dude is.
I hate this shit.
Like, I mean, you heard about the shooting in West AJ this morning, right?
No.
Yeah, someone got shot.
Well, shot and killed?
We don't know. We don't know, but it was maybe like a student and maybe an RA that got shot this morning. This is like, I'm like shaking.
Do y'all know on what floor?
I don't. How come we always have a game? Allison's okay, so keep an RA there.
So you get this a lot?
Huh?
You get this a lot?
No, this is like the first year where all this bad shit went down.
They seem to think that it was a lone gunman who, while we had been earlier told was in custody, is now reported dead.
And I have some new information about the injuries. We know that at least 20 people were killed. We are now being told by Carillion's spokesperson that 4 patients are at the New River Valley Medical Center. 3 of those are in stable condition and 1 is in critical condition, all with gunshot wounds. And then 3 additional patients have been brought to Roanoke Memorial Hospital. News 7's Rachel DePompa, though, we are told, has some additional information. Rachel.
Well, Jean, we are now hearing 22 dead, including the gunman. That word just came out. That is including the one person over at Ambler Johnson, at least 20. It's still the ballpark figure, over at Norris Hall, which is an engineering building, classrooms in that area. But we are hearing 22 dead, including the gunman at this time.
Hey, Johnny, where are you right now? Where is your class? There was a shooting in West AG. Okay, I don't believe you were in the garage right now. There's a bunch of policemen like right outside the garage with guns and shit.
That guy looks to understand there.
At about 7:15 this morning, a 911 call came to the University Police Department concerning an event in West Ambler Johnson Hall. There were multiple shooting victims. While in the process of investigating, about 2 hours later, the university received reports of a shooting in Norris Hall. The police immediately responded. The shooter in Norris Hall is deceased. There are multiple fatalities. The number of fatalities has not been confirmed. Victims have been transported to various hospitals in the immediate area in the region to receive emergency treatment. And we will proceed to contact the next of kin as the victims' identities are available.
We have a ballpark figure on fatalities. It's at least 20 fatalities.
We heard that someone just walked into a classroom and opened fire. Is that true?
Some of the victims were shot in the classroom.
So the gunman walked into a classroom and opened fire on the students in there?
Some of the victims were shot in a classroom.
Do you believe it was one gunman and that gunman is deceased?
At this time, we believe it is only one gunman, yes.
But I am struck by the stark description that you were left with there from the chief, Flincham, of and answering the question of is it true that a shooter walked into a classroom? The chief said yes. So you are left with this stark image of the shooter walking into a classroom
Columbine.
and opening fire.
Exactly what we saw.
Yes.
Is there any profile of a shooter like this, someone who walks into a public space and seemingly shoots randomly? We don't know if he knew anyone specifically, but at least 22 people are dead, and we know that at least he intended to inflict a lot of damage on a lot of people.
Well, you're right, Allison, and I get on a little bit of a slippery slope because I'm not a profiler, but I certainly work with a lot of them along, some of them that's on your network that you use frequently in our careers. And I think that they would say that you're probably going to be looking at a person who certainly has some deep-seated, to say the least, some deep-seated psychological issues, but may have been a very quiet type of individual and storing up with all types of animosities and issues that they have with them that cause them to all of a sudden one day explode. And if this person was acting alone, you know, many of these shootings we see, there may be 2 or 3 people acting together, sort of a planned attack, if you will, with others. But if this person is acting alone, I think the profilers would say this is a person that's been very close to himself, probably hasn't talked to anybody else about this types of thing. And if people would come out of the woodworks after it's all over, they'll probably say, oh my goodness, I'm so surprised he was so quiet, or she was so quiet and shy, and they kept to themselves and mind their own business. I think that when you look at their products, their living areas and so forth, that the profilers will be able to put together a pretty good person who was reserved and non-assuming, that no one would have thought would have done this. And today with computers, oftentimes you find a lot of people who are somewhat reclusive in our technical world today sort of live on their computers, not so much the cell phones unless there's a computer in it, a Trio or something of that nature, but they live on their computers. They get their information from that, they get their equipment from that, they can order online and so forth, so they'll be able to really paint a clear portrait as to who this person was. When I think I've seen it all, then I see something like this. When you look at the numbers of this, and I'm looking at the numbers of at least 22 dead and 28 injured, you know, this is so startling because this is like a combat operation in full combat that you would see this many people. So when I think of this, it just absolutely sets me back, is that one person could deliberately go through and shoot this many people. And you know, you're talking close to 50 people here or more that's been hit by one of these bullets. It's absolutely amazing that one could procure that much ammunition and have that type of firepower to be able to do it all by themselves. So I think the authorities are going to be looking into that pretty heavily, as that how could he go around with this much firepower to be able to do this type of damage.
I'm actually in the United States Capitol, and I just spoke with 2 members of Congress from Virginia, and they just got off of a conference call with Virginia officials to give them the latest on the information on what happened at the Virginia Tech campus.
They believe 31 are dead plus the gunman. 31 are dead plus the gunman.
Can you describe the security in the buildings, the academic building, the dorm building? How does one get into those buildings?
I didn't hear the first part.
Can you describe security in those buildings? Do you need like a swipe card to get into the dorm building? And what time? How does that work basically for both buildings, the academic and dorm?
The academic buildings are open access.
Is what?
Open access.
Open access all the time?
Yes. Well, they're locked at a certain hour at night, but during the day it's open access.
So the dorms are locked during the day. You can only get a key card in there.
I'm not sure if that's during the day or not.
It starts. That's an important thing to know. It starts.
I'm sorry.
How many degrees
let me answer his question first. The swipe cards in the dormitories start in the evenings, and then they go off in the mornings.
What time?
7. Around 7.
They go off around 7 a.m.
What do they know? Which students have to see?
Today's deadly shooting rampage at Virginia Tech is the worst in this country's history. The massacre is only the most recent incident of deadly violence at our schools and college campuses. Before this morning, the worst campus shooting in the United States occurred more than 40 years ago. In 1966, Charles Whitman, a student at the University of Texas, killed 15 people while wounding 31 others. The deadliest high school shooting was in 1999 at Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado. 2 teenagers killed 12 fellow students and a teacher before they committed suicide. This week marks the 8th anniversary of Columbine. In March 2005, a 16-year-old student in Red Lake, Minnesota shot and killed 8 people, including 4 fellow students and his grandfather. The gunman later killed himself. And in October of last year, another shocking school shooting. 5 girls were killed, 6 others wounded by a gunman who stormed the Georgetown Amish School in Nickel Mines, Pennsylvania. We'll have continuing coverage, unfortunately, of violence in our high schools and college campuses here later in the broadcast. And this, of course, not the first incident of violence in the Virginia Tech area. In August of last year, the first day of classes was cut short at Virginia Tech. The campus was shut down by a manhunt for an escaped prisoner. The inmate killed a deputy sheriff on a nearby hiking trail, and he killed a security guard at a hospital. Virginia Tech received a series of bomb threats over the past 2 weeks as well. The school closed down 3 halls and canceled classes Friday after those bomb threats. It's not known whether today's shooting rampage is related to those bomb threats.
Whoa! That gripping video conveys the sense of chaos, the panic that gripped the Virginia Tech campus this morning. Joining us now is Jamal El-Barghouti. He's the student who recorded that video earlier today. Jamal, I know this must be extremely painful and difficult for you, but tell our viewers where you were, what time this occurred, when you started your camera rolling.
That was around 10 to 10, around 9:50 a.m. here Eastern Time in Blacksburg. And I was just going to campus to talk to my advisor, but then I started hearing people telling me to leave. So I was on campus around 10 o'clock.
What kind of camera were you using?
It was my cell phone camera. I have a Nokia N70, and I was just using the cell phone camera.
And so what did you start hearing some shots and all, and you saw people running? Is that when you decided to start rolling video?
Well, I took that decision when I saw a policeman taking off his gun and started looking for a target to shoot. I knew that this isn't another bomb threat because we had 2 last week. So I knew this is something way more serious. It was then when I decided to use my camera.
We heard, we counted 27 shots in the video that you made available to CNN through our iReport operation. 27 shots. Do you know if those shots were coming from the gunman, coming from the police? Do you have any idea what those popping sounds, where they were coming from?
I have no idea. Thanks for counting them, Wolf. I didn't know they were 27 shots.
So give us a little bit of flavor of what your fellow students have been saying to you over these past few hours.
Well, everybody here in Blacksburg is really sad. Blacksburg is one of the best and nicest towns I've ever been to. It's a really safe place. You can't imagine how safe it is. And with 2 bomb threats and 2 people died in August at the very first day of this semester, and now more than 30 students, I guess, or 30 people got killed in this incident. Everybody is so sad. Everybody is shocked. We don't know what's going on in here. We're just hoping that everything would settle down and Blacksburg would once again be the small, nice town it used to be. Jamal, it actually is.
Jamal, where are you from originally?
Well, I'm originally from the West Bank, Palestine. I lived most of my life in Saudi Arabia, though.
Jamal El-Barghouti, thank you so much for doing what you did. Please be careful over there. Good luck to you. Good luck to all your fellow students at Virginia Tech. Is there anything else you want to say to our viewers?
I just want to say how sorry I am for all of the families of those who got killed or injured in this incident. That's probably the only thing I can say.
Well said.
We are really sorry for them.
Jamal El-Barghouti.
Thank you very much, Wolf.
Thank you, Jamal.
Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thank you for watching us tonight on a very tragic day in America. Mass murder in Virginia. Now, my usual talking points will be delivered a bit later on. They deal with how the far left is trying to exploit the IMA situation, with the Queen of Mean, Rosie O'Donnell, leading the way.
Schools should be places of safety and sanctuary and learning. When that sanctuary is violated, the impact is felt in every American classroom and every American community. Today, our nation grieves with those who have lost loved ones at Virginia Tech. We hold the victims in our hearts, we lift them up in our prayers, and we ask a loving God to comfort those who are suffering today.
He was, I would say, about a little bit under 6 feet tall, young-looking Asian, dressed sort of strangely, almost like a Boy Scout, with a very short-sleeved, light tan shirt and some sort of ammo vest that was black over it. He came in eventually later, and he just stepped within 5 feet of the door and just started firing. He seemed very thorough about it. He left for about 30 seconds, came back in, did almost exactly the same thing. Because I guess he heard us still talking. And then we forced ourselves against the door so he couldn't come in again because the door would not lock. He came and tried to force himself in about another 3 times, then started shooting through the door. It was a solid wooden door without no windows though.
Virginia Tech first informed students of the situation via email at 9:26 a.m. This was about 2 hours after the first shooting, which was thought at the time to be isolated and domestic in nature.
And today, President Bush pledged the federal government will do whatever it can to help this community. While the campus was in lockdown this morning, students who were trapped in their dorm rooms turned to the internet for information.
How important was the web and email and text messaging during this crisis?
It was very important, and I actually had people crowded around my laptop just to watch the news and the updates as they unfolded.
It was a sure sign of the times. Students using the web, cell phones, and other devices as a lifeline to the outside world.
We had no television in our classroom, and so the web just became our television.
I can't talk about on the behalf of other students. Personally, I think the Virginia Tech police did a good job. Unfortunately, many people have died. It's really easy to come after the accident and say we should have done something. I believe that the Virginia Tech police did or took the decision they thought was the best for them, or best at that time. Many people are angry, but more than being angry, they are really sad for the high casualty that Virginia Tech took today. We are all sad, and our condolences go to the families of those missing or dead.
And the saddest thing that the police chief just confirmed for us is that they are still in the process of notifying family members about those who have died. Jamal Albergudi, thank you. Yep.
Okay, thank you. No, I just wanted to tell you that here I was talking to some of my friends who until now do not know the faith of their cousins, and it's really a terrible thing in there. Seeing people almost about to cry, or that's really shocking. They are really tough people, I know that, but this situation is really, really tough. You can't imagine how much people are sad. They just want to know what happened to their friends and relatives.
After the full extent of the shooting became evident, the university canceled classes for the rest of the week and held an assembly and candlelight vigil the following evening on April 17th. The event included a speech by the somehow kind of even worse than Trump President George W. Bush.
I think what makes this different is that a parent or a loved one thought their child was, learning to enrich their lives, and the next thing is they're dead.
Now watch this drive.
This was an extraordinarily bloody day in Baghdad, deadliest day, in fact, since that stepped-up American presence in that city. A wave of bombings in Shiite neighborhoods, killed more than 175 people today alone, 140 of them in the worst single attack at a market that was being rebuilt after being bombed just 2 months ago. Iraqi police suspect Sunni insurgents linked to al-Qaeda are to blame, but some witnesses there today told our own Richard Engel they blame American forces.
You got that? You want some water? Water? Mike? Come on, keep running. Here. Here. You getting them? I'm getting them, son. Come on, you're almost there. Hurry. That's fucked up.
Norris Hall was closed for the remainder of the semester.
You had everything you wanted. Your Mercedes wasn't enough, you brat. Your golden necklaces weren't enough, you snob. Your trust fund wasn't enough. Your vodka and cognac weren't enough. All your debaucheries weren't enough. Those weren't enough to fulfill your hedonistic needs. You had everything.
You hear the strong anti-rich people theme. This is the manifesto, by the way, and it goes on. There's a close-up of a knife. There are pictures of hollow point bullets, an almost artistic photo of them. Goes on like this for pages. I have yellow posted on here because he mentions martyrs like Eric and Dylan, the names of the Columbine gunmen.
University officials allowed students, if they chose, to abbreviate their semester coursework and still receive a grade. Governor Kane later created an 8-member panel, including former Secretary of Homeland Security, Tom Ridge, to review all aspects of the tragedy, from Cho's medical history to Virginia Tech's delay in warning students after the initial shooting. In August 2007, the panel concluded, among more than 20 major findings, that the Virginia Tech Police Department, quote, did not take sufficient action to deal with what might happen if the initial lead proved erroneous, unquote. While the panel did find errors in judgment and procedure, the ultimate conclusion was that Cho himself was responsible for his own actions, and to imply that anyone else was accountable, quote, would be wrong, unquote. The review panel validated public criticisms that Virginia Tech Police erred in prematurely concluding that their initial lead in the double homicide was a good one, and in delaying a campus-wide notification for almost 2 hours. The report concluded that the toll could have been reduced if the university had made an immediate decision to cancel classes and a stronger, clearer initial alert of the presence of a gunman.
New shit has come to light.
It came to light that Cho Sung-hee used eBay to purchase 2 10-round magazines for one of the guns used in the shooting. On July 30th, 2007, the online auctioneer prohibited the sale of firearms magazines, firearms parts, and ammunition on its site. The southwest wing of Norris Hall, where the massacre took place, was closed in 2008 and completely renovated in 2008 and 2009. The building now houses the Center for Peace Studies and Violence Prevention, the Biomechanics Cluster Research Center, and the Global Technology Center, as well as other programs. Ambler Johnston Hall was also closed and renovated.
For several days now, a national debate has emerged about giving on-air attention to killers, showing their photos over and over and over and over again, saying their names over and over and over again. Does this glorify them, or does it send a dangerous message? NBC News now finds themselves at the center of this debate. Last Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, NBC anchor Brian Williams went on the air with this report.
Good evening. We now know what the Virginia Tech gunman was doing during that 2-hour period between shootings on campus. He was compiling before going to the post office and mailing via overnight mail what can only be described as a multimedia manifesto.
The name of the sender on the package, according to NBC News, was A. Ishmael, or Ishmael, according to the New York Times. According to NBC News, the words Ismail Axe were scrawled on one of Cho's arms. It was reported a few days after the package was received that the internet is abuzz with speculation about the meaning of the phrase Ismail Axe on Cho's arm. One hypothesis is that Ismail Axe represents divine retribution in reference to the Islamic belief that Ibrahim, the father of Ishmael, broke some idols with his axe to abolish idol worship, or to the Islamic belief that Allah asked Ibrahim to sacrifice the innocent Ishmael. No one reported Cho was Muslim, and he refers to himself in Christian terms and refers to Jesus being hung on a cross, which is not part of Islamic beliefs. Another hypothesis for the name Ismail Axe is that it could be a reference to Drum Hadley's poem, The Goat Ranchers, which talks about Ishmael's axe. Other hypotheses are that Ishmael, Ishmael Axe, and Axishmael were references to Ishmael, the narrator of Herman Melville's Moby Dick, or to a set of books by Daniel Quinn that features a gorilla named Ishmael that examines humankind. It has also been suggested Ismail Axe refers to Ishmael Bush, the hero of James Fenimore Cooper's novel, The Prairie. It is also suggested Ishmael, Ishmael Axe, and Axe Ishmael could refer to Ismail Ak, a professor of psychiatry at a Turkish university whose studies include psychiatry of antisocial and suicidal behavior. Among other suggestions were anagrams that referred to the ancient punishment of pouring salt on fields that made them incapable of growing crops, a Bob Marley song, Small Axe, and a technology called Axis Mail that lets users have email messages sent to their cell phones. It was also theorized that Ismail Axe was a reference to the meaning of Ishmael, which is exile or outcast, according to Webster's dictionary. In his PDF, mailed to NBC, Cho states,
"Children of Ishmael, crusaders of anti-terrorism, my Jesus Christ brothers and sisters, you're in my heart. I saw we took up the cross. Children of Ishmael, took up our guns and knives and any sharp object, and spare no lives until our last breath and last ounce of energy. I am Axe Ishmael. I am the anti-terrorist of America."
A teenager who intentionally set fire to a classroom, no deaths, in South Korea in 2015 said he, quote, wanted to leave behind a record like Cho Sang-hee, unquote. It was reported in 2015 that some South Korean internet users glorified the Virginia Tech killings and affectionately called Cho General Cho. In 2017, after the United Express Flight 3411 incident was reported, numerous people on the South Korean internet commemorated Cho, saying, for example, quote, "I miss General Cho Sung-hui," unquote. It is from the DC Inside Forum in 2014 that came the idea of calling Cho a general of the Battle of Virginia, the name given by the forum to the Virginia Tech killings. The forum hailed Cho as a hero against racism towards Koreans. The nickname General stemmed from the idea that Cho killed numerous people despite only being one person, thus making him an apparent genius tactician. Or a fucking coward who just trapped a bunch of people in a building and shot them. Like, oh, how brilliant.
He was trying to have more impact but it took 2 days to get to us. The biggest material advance in the biggest story in the nation. I was down at Virginia Tech on that campus for 2 days of coverage. I get back and I get paged when I land, come right to the boss's office. To me, there was never a debate. This was news. This is journalism. The debate was, how can we pare back, be as sensitive as possible in editing all of this garbage and profanity to give a sense of what we have here. Did he act alone? Who is he? What was his motivation? What did he do in the 2 hours the campus wasn't locked down between shootings? All those 4 questions were materially answered here.
This macabre presentation is, of course, hugely distressing for the families.
More pain for a community already in agony. When NBC News broadcast footage of Cho Sung-hui, students across this campus were tuned in and taking in every detail.
It gives us a better idea what he was doing in those 2 hours and his motives and everything, but Supreme Court experts say the fact that he put that much thought into it is just really disturbing.
I definitely think at some point it should have been aired. I'm not sure if right now was probably the best time.
We were very careful on nightly news. We talked about it a lot, 7.5 hours. We took the entire day and we winnowed it down to this small part. We introduced it carefully on nightly news, then everybody's tape machines were rolling. Then it was off to the races. And that night, by the time I got home, my wife and I turned on the cable channels. It was what we call wallpaper.
The videos are in the nature, and I think in the way he intended, they're very disturbing. And obviously he wanted everybody to see these as soon as possible after these shootings occurred. And I just think it only adds up to everybody's sadness and sort of nervousness, even, just about the entire situation.
Do you think it adds are people angrier about it now than they were before they saw the video?
I don't think anybody can be more angrier than, or sad, or depressed than when they see a friend of theirs has died. I just think this only compounds onto it, but I don't think it particularly adds or takes away from it. It just prolongs the process of getting over it just a little bit longer.
Okay, well, what we did is we had the head of our policy and standards group and a number of people look at everything and say, okay, we could use that, we can't use this. We wanted something...
What was the can't? What was the can't?
Oh, everything from over-the-top profanity, incredibly violent images, things like that.
More violent than we've already seen.
And I would also say, Oprah, that he didn't send us videotape of him doing the act. He shot videotape of himself talking to the camera. There's a difference there, I think, especially in the discussion about whether to use it at all.
Like Moses, I split the sea and lead my people, the weak, the defenseless, and the innocent children of all ages. You have vandalized my heart, raped my soul, and torched my conscience.
This was a videotape that showed somebody on the edge, somebody who was ready to blow.
Cho Sung-hee was mentally ill and delusional, a psychotic, mental health experts have said. As early as 2005, 2 female students at Virginia Tech complained about the anxious son of Korean immigrants, and a state court declared him to be at risk for suicide, referring him for psychiatric treatment. Like the Columbine killers, Cho took his own life in the rampage. but mental health experts have said he may have suffered from bipolar depression or schizophrenia. Unlike Cho, his hero, Eric Harris, was a psychopath, controlling, manipulative, and sadistic, according to journalists, psychologists, and law enforcement experts who studied the case. Psychopaths are in touch with reality and rational, and nearly always well-liked and charming, according to experts. Dylan Klebold was the lonely depressive, full of mood swings and suppressed emotional rage, according to psychiatrists involved in the case. But together, the Columbine pair was a deadly dyad, according to Dave Cullen, a journalist who has covered the tragedy in his book, Columbine. The Klebolds told reporter David Brooks that they objected to the way their son had been described as depressive and blamed the toxic atmosphere of teasing at the high school. But Cullen said that unlike Cho, who is not well-liked and kept to himself, Harris and Klebold had an active social life and were bullies rather than bullied. We always get the wrong answer because we phrase the question wrong, Cullen said. Everyone says, "Why did they do it? Why did they do it?" That gets you in trouble. There isn't one thing to explain Columbine, he said. Why Eric did it and why Dylan did it, they are polar opposites. You can't fuse it into one. It's the same thing with school shooters, he said. We still go the same route and look for a profile and think we've got one. Outcast, loners, bullies. In 2/3 of cases, they don't apply. There are 3 or 4 or 5 profiles. According to former FBI psychiatrist Frank Ochberg, who worked in hostage negotiations in the 1970s, Cullen's book hit the nail on the head. The general public has its own idea about evil and how it gets created, distilled, and powered. Ochberg told ABCnews.com, "We have so many archetypes. Harris was a budding psychopath, a person without a conscience," he said. He got his satisfaction by dominating. Psychopaths don't feel guilty because they are blind to guilt, Ochberg said. Harris also had sadistic tendencies, which propelled him to seek vengeance. Klebold, on the other hand, was depressed with pent-up anger and mood regulation problems, but together they had violent creativity, Ochberg said. Eric needed Dylan's emotionality and impulsiveness, and Dylan needed Eric's cold psychopathy, according to Ochberg. While Klebold longed to end his life, as seen in his journals, for Harris, suicide was not a concern, according to Ochberg. His life wasn't as important as his appetite, he said. He turned a comic book fantasy into reality. The purpose was not to kill himself, but it was an option. He needed power. According to FBI trainer Kenneth V. Lanning, psychopathy and psychosis can overlap, but the public wrongly uses the terms interchangeably. Psychotics are mentally ill, delusional, and out of touch with reality. Psychopaths can be wheeler-dealers and manipulators, he said. Most psychotics are not violent, but their nature is unpredictable, he said. Neither is necessarily a killer, said Lanning, but society tends to focus on those common violent crimes. Whether psychopaths, sometimes called sociopaths, lack a moral compass is up for debate, according to Lanning. They have a conscience, he said. It's just that it's their own, not society's. A sex offender may kidnap and rape and mutilate women, but if you put him in a prison next to a guy who fondles children, he thinks he's a sick pervert.
And he says that the media's recent airing of the killer's video is a social catastrophe. Those are pretty strong words.
Well, I think they're fitting words. Picture this. NBC gets a letter addressed to Tom Brokaw.
Yeah.
It's got anthrax in it. Well, that's news. Do they open it? No. Why? because it is toxic. And this is psychologically toxic. It's toxic to the victims, it's toxic to the families, and when someone who's stable watches it, they may say, okay, well, this person is evil, and now I can understand what evil looks like. Well, first of all, that's not how he looked most of his life. So if you think you're going to recognize someone by watching that video, no, he had to steal away at night, and he had to sculpt something like a Quentin Tarantino or a Jerry Bruckheimer epic so that we could see him exactly the way he could look his toughest. It's phony. You don't see how disorganized and irrational because he's written a script. You don't see what doesn't connect. You don't see that he's not tormented. You don't see that this happens in an idyllic environment. This is not a crime of bullying. This is a crime of a person seeking immortality using bullying as a pretext.
But why is it a social catastrophe?
It is a social catastrophe because if we let off a radioactive cloud, people might be affected and they wouldn't know it, but the radiation seeps into the ground and the cows eat it and they drink the milk and they get thyroid cancer. People, they have access to it, they can see it, they're affected, and it's not an overnight thing, Oprah. It's more like, you know, I see this, I see that he's angry, I see that people can be that way, and then the next time you see it, you say, well, you know what? I felt that way before. And then the next time you see, you know what? Nobody likes me, I'm pathetic, I'm useless, this guy was useless and pathetic, I'm mad as hell, and then you see it again, and the more one sees it, the more it becomes a training example.
He also lost his 15-year-old son named Daniel at Columbine. And what do you want to say?
I think the primary issue for me is the timing. The 2 days after this tragedy in Virginia, 2 days before the anniversary of Columbine, I think was a terrible time to present this video. I think they have an obligation to talk to the community and say, is this really a good time to do this? When we have people who have not buried their loved ones, to have this come on TV.
So you think NBC News should have gone to the community?
Yes, they are part of the community, and they have to be sensitive to what that does. We had a killer who had a manifesto, and NBC allowed itself to be used by that killer to broadcast his manifesto. Unfortunately, I think we do have to release materials like this, but there's a time, and I frankly think the world could have waited a while before getting this.
Well, Mr. Kappas obviously disagrees. Mr. Kappas